Music-related content is something I would like to make more often on the channel, and with this recent purchase for my vinyl record collection, Kid Amnesia by Radiohead, I thought it'd be great to unbox this release and discuss all of the tracks that are included by ranking both albums that make up this collection in the form of a tier list, which should be fun. But as for the band itself, I feel like I have mentioned Radiohead once or twice on the channel, usually in Blu-ray and DVD update videos, being one of my favourite bands and arguably producing some of the most influential music for me personally anyway. And compared to their earlier work, these two albums definitely grow on you over time. It took quite a few listens for me to really appreciate the more experimental change from rock music that they were known for with albums such as The Bends and OK Computer, leaning more into the alternative and the electronic genre with Kid A and Amnesiac. I'm really glad to finally add this set to my record collection. It's one that I have been after for a little while, containing the fourth and the fifth studio albums from Radiohead. Plus, we also have some never-before-released extra content included, all of which is pressed onto red-coloured vinyl. Originally, these albums were released back in the years 2000 and 2001, and their recording sessions were more or less back-to-back, giving Radiohead more than enough content to spread over two studio albums, and the vinyl record reissue was done back in 2021 to reflect the 20th anniversary of, again, Kid A and Amnesiac, and both of the albums are present on this set in their entirety, same as previous with hidden tracks where applicable. However, it's great to have an extra record of new material included, and when it comes down to essentially double dipping when you've already got the CDs for these albums, picking up the record set, I felt as though I could justify this purchase for the extra tracks. And to coincide with the reissue, there was also a really bizarre video game experience released, simply known as the Kid Amnesia Exhibition, published by Epic Games. Sadly, I haven't had the opportunity to play through this, but I did watch some gameplay of it online, and it's very trippy to say the least. It takes advantage of the stunning artwork and illustrations designed for the album by Tom York and Stanley Darmwood, paired with tracks from the project. And I've always loved the artwork on both of these albums, especially Kid A, the distorted looking sky and I guess the frozen peaks giving off more of an apocalyptic vibe. And with Amnesiac, it is a little bit more simplistic in comparison, but does become all the more meaningful when you look into Tom York's weird obsession with the crying Minotaur character pictured on the front cover. Unboxing this collection, there are 3 records included featuring the main albums themselves, plus a bonus record featuring new material released for the 20th anniversary. And I'll be honest, there's nothing overly ambitious from this collection. The duration of the new stuff is roughly about 30 minutes overall, most of it being just remixes of existing tracks, but I did really enjoy the release of If You Say the Word. This tune was recorded during the original sessions, only to then be shelved, and like most songs across both albums, I found this to be another one that does grow on you over time. For sure was a standout piece for me personally, but anyhow, let's delve into both albums as we start the tier list for the Kid Amnesia collection by Radiohead. The opening to Kid A is one of my favourite album introductions, that of course being Everything in Its Right Place. And I feel as though I only really began to appreciate this tune after hearing it featured in the Gareth Edwards film from last year, The Creator. And I loved its usage in that, particularly the build-up within the first few seconds of the track, the raspy vocals, and I guess the subversive tone, matching this album's reputation, which you'll no doubt have heard the phrase greatest left turn in music history associated with Kid A, and the opening track easily captures that idea, and for me, it's definitely an A-tier track for sure, a very memorable piece. In comparison to that, however, the title track itself, Kid A, it's not really one that I'm a fan of. I think the opening is beautiful with the soft, lullaby-like melody, but the distorted lyrics didn't really click with me, but I will praise it for just being unique. But the vocal edits just aren't for me, hence why unfortunately that one is going into the bottom tier on the tier list. Next up is the national anthem, which I absolutely love. The build-up and the instantly recognisable twang sound at the start is great, and then the heavy bass line hits, and then there's no turning back. And I'm certain that twang sound was actually used much later on for the song The Numbers off their last album, A Moon-Shaped Pool. Oddly, a fairly familiar sound for me. And the tune itself is definitely one that I would say is for repeat listens, where I'd maybe get as far as the opening, and then I would just switch the track off as it descends into a chaotic cesspool of jazzy wind instruments. But I do really like this one, so it's definitely going in A tier above the opening track. How to Disappear Completely is a very interesting piece, and if memory serves, this one was composed in reference to how Tom York was feeling when touring OK Computer, and how he couldn't cope with the fame and the fan demand, and so to alleviate the pressure he faced from the previous record, he made the conscious decision not to do any single releases for Kid A, which, under circumstances, is completely understandable. And so since then, York has gone on record saying that this one is one of the most beautiful tracks the band has ever made, and I completely agree, it's for sure a work of art, and this one is again going in A tier. Tree Fingers, I know a lot of people really like this one for the ambient chills, but I'll be honest, it didn't really do anything for me. It's not something that I would listen to unless I'm just going through the entire album. I'd say I do prefer it to Kid A, so I'll place this one in C tier. In comparison to that, next up we have Optimistic, which may be an unpopular opinion, but I absolutely adore this track, and it's genuinely my favourite piece from the entire album. Its haunting lyrics always capture my imagination, and the production on this piece is astoundingly upbeat. The drumming from Phil Selway in particular really makes this track stand out, and the last couple of minutes where he lets loose on the drums paired with the harmonic vocals in the background, just absolutely spectacular. This is an S tier track for me, and I just love how it slowly eases into the next track, In Limbo. And this, unfortunately, is one that I do tend to skip over. I like the energy from it, but the distorted lyrics just do nothing for me, so this one is going into C tier. Idiotech I really like, and there's some great trivia behind this one, where Johnny Greenwood apparently experimented with the sound engineering, recording almost an hour's worth of audio samples for this one before handing it off to Tom, and the lyrics were then apparently done by drawing random phrases from a hat of all things. I really hope that's true, but it definitely homes in on the more electronic and the more experimental side of the album, and it also makes use of sampling an old 70s piece from composer Paul Lansky, who kindly allowed Radiohead to utilize some of his work. So this one is definitely an A-tier track for me. From Idiotech we move on to Morning Bell, which is a track that comes up a couple of times on the Kid Amnesia collection. And this particular version is more light-hearted, I would argue, but it's my least favourite. Some incredible lyrics and the vocal range is great, but it's another one that I kind of find difficult to get into. I won't be as harsh with this one, I'm going to place it at a low B tier, but I definitely do feel the other variations of Morning Bell are a little bit more unique and more interesting in comparison. And finally we have Motion Picture Soundtrack, and this is the last of the official named tracks for Kid A very slow, and I'd maybe say whimsical piece that feels very conclusive. Some very memorable lyrics such as, "It's not like the movies, they fed us on little white lies." Brilliant piece to end on. I'm going to place this one in the B tier, but is this the end? Actually no, there's a hidden track called Untitled, which isn't really anything too special. On the original album there's a few minutes of silence after the last track plays, and then Untitled hits you with a sort of ambient sound, and for me, this one's just another C-tier track if I'm being honest. Moving on to Amnesiac, I actually really like this album. It's definitely an underappreciated one, and like many, I slept on this for the longest time, but if you enjoyed Kid A, you'll definitely find some form of appreciation for a good majority of these tunes. And starting off with the track list on this one, we have Packed Like Sardines in a Crushed Tin Box. And with this one, I love the slow pacing, the unusual rattling and clanking sounds from what appears to be a kettle drum at the beginning, gently morphing into a more electronic sound overall. And although the lyrics do appear auto-tuned to some extent, thankfully they are not completely distorted, and it's a much more soothing and darker track which really does set the tone for this album, and it's definitely one that I would place quite high up on the B tier. Pyramid Song was released as one of the 3 singles and is genuinely one of the most compelling and beautiful melodies I've ever heard from Radiohead. Splicing unusual electronic sounds with the piano melody works to complement the atmospheric setup, and I'd honestly say this is top 10 Radiohead material, which as you can imagine is already a very difficult list to make, and I also love the music video for this track, which I'd recommend checking out, and for me this is easily an S tier song. Next up we have Polk Pole Revolving Doors, which is where I feel the album starts to fully embrace the electronic style. This one comes across as maybe more disconnected from the rest of the tracks, however, becoming its own strange mix that really tests your patience. And I like the rhythm behind it, but the lyrics and the repetitive nature do leave a lot to be desired for me personally. It does have some unusual ideas that I can respect for being experimental, but it's not really one that I enjoy, so this one is going in the bottom tier, unfortunately. Next up we have You and Whose Army, which I feel is quite a lonely piece, and I love the moving lyrics paired with the piano melody starting off very slow and subtle, and then it finally lets loose about 2 minutes in, and I also feel this track kind of slips under the radar. For me, it's easily an A-tier highlight on this album. I Might Be Wrong is another single release and yet another standout from the album, where I feel Colin Greenwood's bass line is something that really gets under your skin throughout this, and although repetitive, likewise with the lyrics, it really is such a haunting experience that becomes a very immersive contribution to the album. For me, this one is easily another A-tier track, one that I did very much enjoy. And then Knives Out is the last single, and this one has a very creative music video to go with it, directed by Mikel Gondry, and it's another eerie piece that I would say encompasses the expected level of sort of melancholic production, but it still makes for a really beautiful piece on the album. Tom's vocals, in particular, are a highlight, and there's loads of really bizarre trivia about this track that I'd recommend reading up on. For example, Tom's description of the lyrics, I believe, was influenced by ideas surrounding cannibalism of all things. Yeah, twisted and dark, but it's still an incredible piece that's going in the A-tier section on the tier list. Morning Bell Amnesiac, I'd say, is my preferred version of this track. It's still not a favourite, but I do like the darker connotations associated with this variation of the song, so for that one that's going in B tier. Dollars and Cents I found to be yet another track that does grow on you with repeat listens. It has many unusual qualities that do make it likeable, but the main thing that I really appreciate from it is the jazz influence, and the gentle drumming at the start does resonate well, so I'm going to put that one as a higher up B tier track. Hunting Bears is a track that I didn't really care for at all. It's very short with its focus and ambience over delivering something more refreshing, I suppose. Sadly just doesn't do anything for me, so this is going to be another bottom tier track. Like Spinning Plates, however, has a really fascinating backstory, and this was made from reversing their song I Will, which later came out on their next album, Hail to the Thief. But during the recording sessions for that track, the band just couldn't get I Will to where it needed to be, and so they messed around with the tune and actually reversed it, which oddly sounded much better, and so they went with it and started learning the melody backwards, which is such a brilliant and creative idea, creating a very existential piece of music, so this one is going as a high B tier track. And then concluding the album, we have Life in the Glass House, and this is a beautifully reflective end to Amnesiac. It retains an appropriately conclusive feel, but it also captures a screechy jazz style reminiscent of previous tracks. And yes, it is a slow start, but when it hits, it just doesn't stop, and this is for sure another really underappreciated piece, and again I feel is worth repeat listens, so this one is going again on B tier. Moving on now to the extra tracks released for the 20th anniversary of this collection. First up is Like Spinning Plates, the Why Us version. Possibly a controversial opinion, but I do prefer this over the original album version. It's very reminiscent of the live variation, which I'd recommend listening to if you haven't, and I feel this one is just a lot more fleshed out in comparison to what was on Amnesiac, and despite being a sort of fair departure from the original, this is easily an A-tier track for me. I really do enjoy this one. Next up, we have a couple of variations of Untitled, versions 1 through to 3, all of which are kind of reminiscent of other tracks from both Kid A and Amnesiac, and generally speaking, I'll be honest, there's nothing too special about these, they just feel more experimental. Fog, the Again Again version, I believe the original track of Fog was an Amnesiac B-side if memory serves, which from what I've heard, Tom apparently hated that track. And this is, I believe, the third rendition of Fog, and it's a lot more melancholic, so I'll place this one at a low B tier. If You Say the Word was released as a single for this compilation, and I found the song kind of underwhelming at first. But when paired with the music video, however, it really caught my attention. The strange visuals of generic white-collar office workers being found in the wild and trapped, only to then be let loose in the big city. There's so many layers to both the video and the song, and truthfully, if it wasn't for the video, I don't think I would really have been as captivated by this one as much as I was in the same way. And there's some really creative visual ideas and camera shots from the music video that really helped sell this piece of music. So for that alone, I'm going to go with a low A tier for this track. Follow Me Around is another one that received a unique music video. This time we see a drone stalking a guy just going about his day. And I do like the video, but I'm honestly not a fan of the song. It just didn't really resonate with me at all. Perhaps one for repeat listens, but I do like the cinematography in the video, but otherwise I can just take it or leave it, so I'm going to place this one in C tier. Polk Paul, the True Love Waits version. This is a very strange combination. It's similar to the album version of the original track, but it utilizes the lyrics from True Love Waits from Radiohead's last album, A Moon-Shaped Pool. Did it enhance anything for me? Not really. I'd rank this as maybe the same as the original track. Next up is The Morning Bell in the Dark version, which has a lot in common with the Amnesiac recording of Morning Bell. But again, this one didn't really enhance anything for me. I did like the change in melody, but yeah, ranking this one, I'm going to do it about the same as the previous renditions of Morning Bell. Pyramid Strings is not a track I would generally listen to at all, but it transitions beautifully from the previous track when listening to the record in full, and as you can imagine, it goes heavy on the string instruments, crafting a hauntingly beautiful filler piece, so this one I'm going to put at a high C tier. Next up is Alt Fast Track, which is an alternative take on a B-side from the single release of Pyramid Song, and I found the original Fast Track creepy and I would say disconcerting. But this variation is much shorter and relies more on the smooth rhythm. And genuinely, I really like this piece. There's so much going on with it. I find it to be a lot more enjoyable to listen to in comparison to the original, so I'm going to put this at a low A tier. How to Disappear into Strings is a beautiful way to end this album of bonus tracks with its very surreal take on how to disappear completely, and very much a defining piece for this era of Radiohead, making this a fitting conclusion. I'm going to rank this as just below the original in the A tier. This is a very solid reimagining and a very enjoyable conclusive end to this collection. So that's going to do it for my vinyl record unboxing and tier list looking at the 20th anniversary collection Kid Amnesia by Radiohead. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to leave me a like down below. I do have more Radiohead specific videos planned for the future, so if you do enjoy this sort of stuff, then please do stick around. In the comments below, let me know if you have a favourite Radiohead track, or maybe a favourite between these two albums. As ever, I love hearing your thoughts and opinions, and for more content, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, DVD Review Studios.
Are you threatening me?